This is the configuration we need to do in the switch 1. Let me to copy the configuration of switch 1, copy, and then pasting in the switch 1. Okay, and after that we first we should check the result, router BGP 65,000, and next comments. Very good. Do or show BGP IPv4 unicast summary. Look at here. Now we have one neighbor, but the neighbor state is idle. We should configure the R2 or switch 2. But checking the BGP table, show BGP IPv4 unicast. As you can see, quad 1/32 locally is injected into the BGP table of switch 1. Let's go to the switch 2. First, I'm going to configuring the switch to copy the switch 1 configuration for the switch 2. Switch 2. Router feature BGP should be enabled first, and then router BGP 65,001. One interesting thing is that here we want to configure iBGP neighborship with loopback interface, but for the eBGP neighborship I can use the connected interface. Because of that feature BGP, router BGP 65,000, router ID is quad 2, address family IPv4 unicast, and then the network, we don't need to advertise any network here, and also the neighbor is 10121, remote AS is 65,000, and address family IPv4 unicast now is enabled. Okay, first we should configure this configuration in the switch 2. The first things that we expect to see is that the neighborship between switch 2 and switch 1, and taking quad 1/32 from switch 1 in switch 2, and we expect that we can see the quad 1/32 in the BGP table of switch 2. Let me to check to show BGP IPv4 unicast summary. Look at here. Unicast summary shows us that we have one neighborship with the switch 1, and also we receive one pass. Let me to check it. Show BGP IPv4 unicast. Yes, quad 1/32 now is received from the switch 1. Okay, now we can configure the iBGP neighborship here. For configuring iBGP neighborship between loopback interfaces, we need that loopback interfaces can reach together. For example, we can configure OSPF inside of the AS65001. Okay, let me to configure OSPF in switch 2, switch 3, and switch 5. Here in switch 2, I can first we should enable the feature OSPF. Let me to configure it. Feature, okay, feature OSPF. This is the first command we need. After that, we can enable the OSPF in the Ethernet 1.2 and Ethernet 1.3, and also loopback 0. You can configure, if you want, the router ID, router OSPF 1, and after that the router ID is quad 2 in the switch 2. After that, we can go to the interface Ethernet 1.2, and then IP router OSPF 1 area 0, for example, and then interface Ethernet 1.3, okay, IP router OSPF 1 area 0, and finally interface loopback 0, IP router OSPF 1 area 0. Show IP OSPF interface brief shows us that we have 3 interface enabled in the OSPF. Okay, very good. And after that, we can configure the OSPF in switch 3. Let me to configure OSPF in switch 3. First, we should enable the feature OSPF, then router OSPF 1. The router ID in the switch 3 is quad 3, for example, and then interface Ethernet 1.2, IP router OSPF 1 area 0. Interface Ethernet 1.3, the same command, IP router OSPF 1 area 0. Interface loopback 0, and again the same command. And finally, we should configure OSPF in the switch 5. In switch 5, first we should enable the feature BGP, then the feature OSPF, also we need feature BGP. And after that, router OSPF 1, okay, the router ID is the quad 5, okay, and then the router interface Ethernet 1.1, 1 IP IP router OSPF1 area 0, and finally in the Ethernet 1 2 IP router OSPF1 area 0. That's it, and also interface loopback 0. Very good. Now, first we should check the neighborship between these three routers, with OSPF neighborship, and after that we can configure the, for example, the BGP neighborship. Show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay, we have neighborship with router 3 and router 5. It's okay. And after that, in the switch 3, show IP OSPF neighbor. Again, we have two neighborship between router 3 and router 2 and 5. Very good. And finally, router 5. Show IP OSPF neighbor. Yes, we have two neighborship. Now, first we should check the connectivity of loopback interfaces in this network. First, from switch 2, ping quad 3 with the source of, for example, quad 2, the IP address of the loopback in the switch 2. Ping quad 3, yes, we have connectivity, and also ping quad 5 with the source of quad 2. Okay, we have connectivity again, and also from the switch 3 we can check the connectivity between this switch and quad 5, source of quad 3. Okay, we have connectivity. Very good. Now we can start the configuration of the BGP in the switch 2 for configuring only neighborship between switch 2's loopback and switch 5's loopback. The first command is neighbor command. Okay, neighbor quad 5. Neighbor quad 5, the remote AS, because this is an iBGP neighbor, is same as the AS number of switch 2. Remote AS is 65001, and also we need update source loopback 0, as you know, and that's it. Okay, let me to add this configuration to the configuration of BGP of switch 2. Copy the configuration again in switch 2. Okay, only I need the configuration of BGP, the configuration of BGP in switch 2. I'm copying this configuration here. Very good. Now, show BGP IPv4 unicast summary shows us that we have only one neighborship because we didn't configure the neighborship because we didn't enable the address family IPv4 unicast for the quad 5. Address family IPv4 unicast, and after that address family IPv4 unicast. Again, show BGP IPv4 unicast shows us that we have quad 5 as an idle state. Very good. Let's go to the switch 3. In switch 3, we have the configuration same as the or similar to the switch 2. First, switch 3. Router feature BGP first should be enabled. And after that, router BGP 65000, and then we should use the router ID command. Router ID is quad 3 in the router in the switch 2, and then address family IP4 unicast should be enabled. The neighbor, the external neighbor, eBGP neighbor, is 10344. Remote AS of our neighbor is 65002. Again, we should enable address family IPv4 unicast. And also we have one internal neighbor, neighbor quad 5, remote AS 65000, update source loopback 0, and address family IPv4 unicast. That's it. This is the configuration of the switch 3. Let me to copy this configuration. And after that, we can configure the switch 5. Let me check the BGP neighborship. Do show BGP IPv4 unicast summary. As you can see, we have two idle states in the switch 3. The first idle is the eBGP neighbor, and the second idle is the switch 5. Very good. Now it's time of the configuring the switch 5 from here. In the switch 5 conf t, feature BGP, okay, in the switch 5. Router BGP 65001, and then router ID is quad 5. Address family IP4 unicast also should be enabled. The first neighbor is we don't have eBGP neighbor, because of it I'm removing the neighbor, eBGP neighbor. The first neighbor is neighbor quad 2 with the remote AS 65001. Update source is loopback 0. Address family IP4 unicast enabled for this neighbor, and also we need a command for this neighbor, and that is the route reflector client. Route reflector, okay, client. Route reflector